Hi guys, and welcome to part 56 of Skyrim Mod Sanctuary. Now, it's been a cold day here, so I do apologise if my voice is a little rough due to the weather, but it is kind of appropriate really, seeing as in this video I'm going to be covering a mod called Frostfall. Frostfall is a mod I've wanted to cover for quite some time, and indeed a lot of people have actually asked me to cover it, and even asked me why I haven't covered it already. And the simple answer to that last question is Frostfall is the type of mod that changes the game, the way it feels and the way you play. And so to really give this mod any justice, I had to play with the mod installed for several weeks to really feel I knew what this mod was offering. So what does it do? What does it offer? Right. A few weeks ago I did a video on Cold and Wet, which made Skyrim feel a little wetter, a little colder. It allowed you to see the effects of cold and rain in people's breathing, in their behaviour, in them putting hoods up, etc. Frostfall goes one step further. It actually makes the harsh weather of Skyrim realistic. It has an effect on your character. Cold is now something you have to actually take into consideration, as it is rain, and all the side effects that go with it. For example, hypothermia. Now, before we go any further, I know some people are probably thinking, oh, this is definitely not for me. I don't want something that makes the game harder or more tedious because I've got to constantly micromanage something stupid like this. Nothing could be further from the truth. The mod author himself has actually said that he wanted to add the feeling of immersion without actually making it tedious and without breaking immersion and fun. And I think he's actually achieved it, and achieved it quite superbly. The great thing about this mod is, although you can spend quite a lot of time trying to figure out all the details, constantly checking your statistics, and etc., you can also play perfectly normally and just be sensible. You can just be sensible. If you see it's snowing and it's cold, don't jump in the lake. Jumping in a lake when it's snowing is a bad idea. You don't need a power to tell you this. You don't need any statistics to tell you this. It's just common sense. Now, in vanilla Skyrim, you can do that. Yeah, we know you can do that. With Frostfall, you can't. So if you've got to get across some ice, you have to jump across the ice, or take some other form of precaution to stop yourself from basically freezing to death whilst you're doing it. If you're running around and it's reasonably cold, it's raining, your character's completely wet, and night falls, and when night falls, it definitely gets cold in Skyrim, you might start thinking about setting up a tent, setting up a fire, warming yourself up, drying off, and maybe even getting a good night's sleep. And instead of actually making the game a little bit more tedious or boring, as some people might think, it actually adds a real feeling of immersion. You really do feel the passage of time, the effects of the world, and you feel a lot more like you're living in a story. Just the fact that you have to set up a camp, dry yourself off, maybe take some food, and then have a little bit of sleep before carrying on in the morning, it really does give you that feeling of being in some sort of epic novel or some movie. The little things that are missing in games like this, those campfire stories that the characters tell, you get a feeling of having gone through that a little bit. But as I say, it doesn't dominate the gameplay. It's one of those things that will pop up maybe once or twice every time you play the game. You might think to yourself, oh, I might want to get myself some firewood just in case I build a fire later, and as you pass some firewood, you chop some firewood, and maybe you don't normally do that. And then towards the end of the game, when you're thinking of saving, you just get this urge to say to yourself, right, I'm going to go and find somewhere warm and dry to leave my character before they save. It's kind of strange, but it really does make you feel connected to the character and to the world. And of course, it does punish you for ignoring this. If you allow your character to get a little too cold, he will start suffering the consequences. There will be effects. There will be little nagging problems. For example, your vision starts getting a little bit, not blurry, but there's like some blur around the edges of your vision as you start to suffer from hypothermia. There will be small penalties to your health, magicka, some skills, etc. So you really, you're going to get some penalties if you don't pay attention to the weather. It also encourages you to rethink your equipment. Some equipment will actually help you stay warm. Cloaks, for example, the big fur cloaks will help you stay warm. So you might take the cloak off when wandering around Whiterun, but when you go off into the mountains, you put that cloak on. And even things like building the tent. If it's raining, you're going to want a tent that's made of leather. If you are in a cold area where it's not very wet, but it's freezing cold, you want a tent that's made of hide, of furs, and keep you nice and warm. And it even integrates with the very popular Skyrim mod, Skyrim Redone, with the Wayfarer perks in that mod. So if you've been taking a lot of Wayfarer skills, if you are a bit of a hunter ranger type character, you can become better at surviving the wilds. You can stop yourself from losing the body heat quite so fast. And so it really adds to the realism, the feeling of realism, but it does not turn the game into a survival game. It is not going to consume your every waking moment as you think about how to survive. It just adds this little extra, the little sort of icing on a cake that makes Skyrim feel like the harsh land it really is. And you have complete control over these effects. You can actually turn it up, turn it down, you can make it really hard, you can make it semi-hard, and it's all controlled from an MCM system. If you're using Sky UI version 3 or later, you will get this great menu that allows you to change all of these things. And the author has actually added sort of in-game tutorials on that menu system, which is a really, really great idea. The mod author has also provided a very, very detailed document. It has its own wiki pages, basically, that will give you full details of absolutely everything. However, the mod author himself encourages you to just install the mod and try it out. He's tried to make it so that everything is not obvious, but pretty easy to figure out. And it is. I've not had to check this document at all, and I am really, really enjoying this mod. The mod does a really good job of letting you know your current status. So if you get rained on, it will tell you you're a little damp. If you get cold, it will warn you, and so on. And when you warm up, it tells you this as well. But there are some useful little powers, some useful little things to know. So for example, there is a weather sense power, and if you activate that, it will tell you immediately what your exposure is. Now 20 is warm. 0 is, I think, sort of cool, and minus is where you're getting cold. So I think the maximum is minus 100 and you die. The wet percentage is fairly obvious, between 0 and 100. Try not to stay wet for very long. Being wet when it's sunny is not a problem, but being wet when it's cold, you will lose heat a lot faster. There is a power called Survival Skills, and when you activate that, it gives you some options. One of them being Build Campfire, a very useful option in that you can place a campfire wherever you want, and there you go. When you activate the campfire, if you have firewood, it will start a fire. And as you can see, you now begin to get warm, or at least you should. If you were cold, you would begin to get warm. There are tents in the game. Obviously, it's nice weather and during the day, but when it gets cold, nighttime or raining, you're going to want somewhere to shelter. And there are several tents in the game, including large ones and small ones. Ones made of leather, which are good against rain, and ones made of hide, which are good against the cold. And to put them down, you simply drop them, and then you get the option to pitch tent. And then you place it wherever you want. Now, one thing that's useful to know is if the tent turns blue, let's move it over here, it is not being warmed up. If you move it close enough to a campfire, and place it like that, This tent is now being warmed. It takes a few seconds for the tent to appear. The tent is now being warmed. Don't worry, there seems to be no chance of the tent catching fire. If you sleep in this tent now, it will keep you warm. If you hadn't have done that, it wouldn't have warmed you up, although it keeps you from losing heat faster than if you sort of try and wait outside. Other things on the survival powers. You can craft certain items. I'm going to let you figure that one out, but you can also harvest wood. Now you can either harvest firewood or dead wood. Both can be used, both are useful, and when you select it, essentially what happens is you spend an hour or so searching around trees to find a pile of dead wood. Remember to pick it up. Harvest wood. Harvest firewood. A few seconds will go by. Your character will move forward with a big pile of wood when the black screen disappears. And there you have it. Again, remember to loot it. And that's it. It does take time, obviously. However, it's an easy way to get wood. And firewood is going to be essential to your survival, making fires. One other thing I would recommend is using a mod such as Convenient Horses, where your horse can store equipment. I find it very useful to store lots of firewood, lots of camping gear, food, etc. on my horse, so I don't have to carry it myself, because of course it is quite heavy. So in closing, this mod for me is now one of my essential mods. It's a mod I won't play without. It makes me feel really connected to this harsh land. It makes me feel like I am playing an epic story rather than just jumping from mission to mission as a computer game. It really does enhance the immersion and realism. Brilliant mod. Very well done. Cannot recommend it enough. Installing Frostfall is pretty easy if it's your first time. You just go along to the file section and download with Manager and activate. It's pretty easy. However, if you are upgrading from a previous version, from 1.6b, there are some fairly detailed instructions that you need to follow. A clean save is recommended when upgrading from 1.6 to 2.0, and he does actually list steps to do that, so that's pretty helpful. Now, I'm not aware of any load order issues for this mod. However, Boss places it very high up on the list for me, and I've no reason to move it. And one last thing to note, when installing this for the first time, the mod itself does not actually start straight away. So if you go to the Frostfall menu, nothing is really available. And the reason is Frostfall has not started. What you will need to do is wait until nighttime, until the stars are visible. You will need to be able to see the stars. And once you see them, you simply gaze up at them for a few seconds. And after a while, you will receive a little message telling you the mod has started. There you go. Nice little message. And you are now ready to go. You can now access the mod configuration menu for Frostfall and choose the settings you wish. Anyway guys, that's it for this video. We're going to end as always with some screenshots that you guys have posted. If you want to post screenshots, I will leave a link down below. You're more than welcome to post them. I try to get as many as I can on each video. I hope you found the video helpful and enjoyable. If you did, remember, please click the like button. I always appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing you guys for whichever video you decide to join me for. And until then, as always, have fun.